Once upon a time, there lived a princess who really hated her princess duties. She didn't like waving at all to her subjects. The fancy dinners, wearing dresses, never getting dirty are all the formality of her life. And the fact that she was being auctioned off to whoever would make her father the best connection made her extremely angry. She was utterly sick of the entire royal circus. She wanted to live her life free of all the formality like a normal girl. So she hatched up a plan to run away. Her lady's maid was her friend and saw how unhappy the princess was. So she helped her hatch the plan and set her up to get out of the castle and into a normal life. However, what the princess didn't know was the lady's maid had weaseled her way into the king and queen's life and was planning a takeover of the princess's life. She wanted to marry the prince the princess was supposed to marry, get a big castle, lots of money, and a nice vehicle. After all, she had worked hard for where she was. She deserved the world. So one night, when there was no moon or stars in the sky that you could visibly see, the lady's maid helped the princess sneak out of her bedroom window through the employee gates and to her apartment. The maid offered the princess her apartment for a place to stay since she had no plans to go back to it. The princess finally felt like she could breathe and that she had a chance to finally live the life she wanted to live. And the lady's maid? Well, she went back to the castle where she slept comfortably in the princess's bed and planned and dreamed of her takeover of the princess's life the next day. The next morning, the lady's maid woke up and went to tell the king and queen that the princess had run away. The king and queen were extremely worried, so they sent out search parties. They looked everywhere for the princess, but couldn't find her. They didn't realize that she was sleeping away the day at the maid's apartment, just because she finally could sleep the day away. She didn't have any duties to fulfill. The king was extremely upset that his daughter had run away, especially since they couldn't find her, because they had planned a surprise wedding for the princess and the prince she was set to marry. The lady's maid saw her opportunity and explained to the king why she should take the place of the princess. She said she had been loyal to the family for years, that she would be happy to marry the prince and make a wonderful, loving wife, so the connection would remain strong for years to come. The king and queen pondered it and talked for a while before they came to a decision. They told the lady's maid that she would, in fact, marry the prince. She was to act like their daughter, as the prince had never seen the princess before, so he would never know the difference. They had no hope of finding their daughter in the next day, so the king and queen thought this idea was the best solution, and not just telling the truth. While this was happening, the real princess was reading all the amazing books in the maid's apartment that she never had time for before, and venturing out into the city she had never been able to explore before. It was magical. She went into taverns, met her subjects, laughed and talked with them to find out what they wanted and needed in their lives. She explored the museums, shops, and restaurants. It was the best day of her life. That night, she heard rumors about a princess marrying a prince. She thought they were talking about someone from a different kingdom. So she just discarded it and went on drinking and celebrating with the other patrons of the tavern. But little did the princess know the castle was in chaos as they prepared for a wedding that was happening the next day for the prince and lady's maid turned princess. The staff worked tirelessly the entire night to get everything set up. The flowers, the dress, the altar, the chairs for the attendees, the food, everything for the wedding was done by the next morning when the lady's maid turned princess walked down the aisle to her new prince, smiling and thinking, I've done it. I'm going to get the guy, the castle, the money, the vehicle. All the things the princess didn't even want. And now the lady's maid turned princess had it. She ended up marrying the prince in a grand celebration, and then he whisked the lady's maid turned princess off to her new home. About a week later, the real princess, while at a tavern, overheard a conversation about the princess of this kingdom marrying the prince she was supposed to marry. It finally clicked in her head. Someone had taken her spot as princess and married the prince. She knew what she had to do. She had to go home and confront her father and mother, the king and queen, as they knew who she was. They wouldn't have married someone off if they hadn't had known who she was. So that's what she did. She went home by sneaking in the employee's entrance, walking right up to the front door to the guards there. She told the guards she needed to see her parents right away. They were shocked. The princess was back already from her honeymoon, but they knew who the princess was from the times she had walked around the yard trying to escape and go into the city. They had stopped her every single time until the lady's maid had helped her escape. She walked straight to her parents' chamber, banged on the door, didn't even wait for an okay to enter, and then walked in. They were both reading, her mother and father, and she just stood there, staring daggers at them. Her mother said, "Darling," and rushed over to hug her. And her father, he just stared daggers right back at her. As her mother, the queen, pulled away, the princess asked, what had they done? The king said the same thing right back to her, and then went on a rant about how irresponsible she was and that she was a child not fit for running a kingdom, that she would never be queen. The princess yelled back, saying how she just spent a week with the people of the land and learning and listening to what they loved and they needed. The king let go of his anger, just sat back and realized maybe he had underestimated his daughter. Maybe she could make her own decisions and lead the kingdom by herself one day. Instead of yelling back, the king went and hugged his daughter, noting how sorry he was and that he forced her into being something she wasn't. The princess hugged him back and said, "It's okay, Daddy. I love you anyways. By the way, I heard someone took my place as princess and married that horrible prince. The king replied, "Oh yes, that was your lady's maid. She hopped at the opportunity to marry the morning after you left. And she walked down the aisle to the prince the next day, said her adieus, and rode off into the sunset with him." Your mother and I were hesitant of the idea at first, but decided she could marry him as the prince had never seen your face. And it worked out. They are now living happily in his castle. When they left, they seemed very happy, so we hope she enjoys her marriage and everything she dreamed of. However, little did they know that the lady's maid turned princess was living in a barn. The prince had gone broke and needed the princess's money to rebuild his lands. Quickly, he found out, though, the lady's maid turned princess had no influence over the king and queen. After multiple requests for money came back denied, he became very upset. But that's a story for another day. As for the princess, she became queen, married someone she truly loved, and her subjects, well, they loved her because the week she spent with her subjects taught her how to run a kingdom. And the princess turned queen lived happily ever after.